Thank you. The opportunity to be here. We have a study session full of items. So we will start with our annual health report and assurances. I will turn the time over to Dr. Vicki Carter to introduce that.
Okay, we have Jessica Benson here to present, and Dr. Valen Thomas is here to support her as her supervisor. So they will present the things that are being presented.
Thank you. Coming around is just the annual health assurances. This year is a very small year, only because it's not a data review year, and so we don't have to. We won't have Tim Lowe joining us to help over the data from the Utah County Health review this year. But what I do need to report on for our state health assurances is that we did hold a committee meeting on April 17th of 2025. And you can see the list of all of our committee members for the Secondary Human Sexuality Committee. Sarah Beeson is our school board member on that committee. And then we have a variety of district and parent volunteers on that committee. There's also the Elementary Maturation Committee, and those members are listed right below that. This year, we did not have any diagrams, images, or presentations approved, but we did have 3 Healthy Boundary videos that were approved to be in our Health 1 and Health 2 courses, which is technically our 8th grade and 10th grade health courses. They are very short, 2 to 3 minute videos on helping students to understand what a healthy boundary is. And those 3 videos were all approved by all of our committee members. There were no new elementary maturation items approved this year. Everything has currently stayed the same. And then as a reminder, this is what the health science and CTE, if all of our health teachers, our health science teachers, and some of our science teachers, some of our that do require a parent consent form fall underneath this category. So not all of our science teachers have to be held to the same requirements, but we do state sex law and policy training with them every 3 years. We do an Alpine sex ed law and policy training with them every 3 years. They are required to do a BOTVIN training once in their health education career, and they are required to teach the BOTVIN curriculum.
Can you tell us what that is?
Oh yes, the BOTVIN curriculum is a curriculum that was approved by the state. It's not necessarily in our human development unit, but it encompasses all of, it's a prevention curriculum. We mostly see it during the substance abuse unit, but it is a curriculum that is approved at the state level to be used throughout the year, and there is a training that goes along with it. It not necessarily doesn't fall under the human sexuality umbrella, Unit 6, but it does. It is a requirement for our health teachers that they go through BOTVIN training at least once in their career.
Thank you.
And then all health or health science teachers that use a parent consent form that teach any of the anatomy, Health 1, Health 2, adult roles, those courses, must use items from the approved materials list, which they all have, and our teachers are amazing at making sure that they stay up on their training requirements and the approved materials. So like I said, that was a really fast one this year. Any questions? Ada.
You said that the Healthy Boundaries series is in the 8th grade and the what?
10th grade.
In the 10th grade.
Yes.
Is that kind of an equivalent to sexual consent, or does that approach?
Not necessarily. 10th grade, they are approved to teach like affirmative consent, so they are they do get to teach consent in 10th grade, and not necessarily just when we're talking about sexuality, but we're talking about consent in general, like as a person. And with the Healthy Boundaries, that's kind of the same thing. It's just 3 short videos that were approved for teachers to use if they would like to, that just allow the students to understand as a person, I have the ability to set healthy boundaries for myself and why I would want to set those healthy boundaries.
Okay, so it kind of approaches it, but it doesn't really go for it. Okay.
Yep. If you would like, I've got the links for all of those that I can send out in the email. They are also already on the new approved materials list, which I believe the school board all has access to as well. So you can go in and click on those videos and look at them if you'd like to.
Thanks.
How often do you look at who's on the committee, and do you replace the parents who have graduated that are listed here?
Every once in a while, we just find if we did just have a switch over with one parent who was unavailable to come to the meetings anymore. At this point right now, we're just trying to keep the committee intact until the separation of the three, because each new district will have to form a new human sexuality committee.
So they're fine to be on here if their students have already graduated.
We like to make sure that they're still on the committee, but we do want to have members that have students that are in the that are technically in school as well. Yeah. Great. Any other questions? And we are actually going to be adding a few people to this committee for the upcoming 2 years, so that we have more representation from all areas. And again, updating, because we want to make sure that as a parent on this committee, they have students that are still in a secondary education classroom. So,
Thank you.
You betcha. Anything else? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. Appreciate that. Our next item is to review with full board and public the fiscal year 2026 tentative budget. So I'll turn the time over to our business administrator, Jason Sundberg, and his team.
Okay. Thanks, Dr. Farnsworth. So this is an exciting day to be able to share the final FY25 budget and the tentative FY26 budget. This process for the FY26 budget really began last October, even before that, because the enrollment projections that we do that are presented in November drive the budget. And then we're at this point, we've had meetings since January, February, meeting with committees, with teams. And then our team will present in, well, just after June 30th, the fiscal year for FY25 will end. We'll start the process of reporting what happened in FY25, have audits for that in August, and then present the financial reports in November. So the process is all connected, and we're excited about this to be able to show the final FY25 and the proposed or tentative FY26 budget. I wanted to recognize, I'm going to introduce our team members that aren't on B's team directly, and then she's going to introduce the others there. So we have, we got Robert Boyer, our accounting director, and Crystal Birch, our assistant budget director and payroll director, and Sherilyn Frost, who is our professional accountant lead. And really appreciate B and her team, all that they've done with this, spent so many hours on this budget book, and I think they're very excited to be able to share it with B is, and so we'll work together on that, and we'll turn the time over to B.
Awesome. Yeah, there's no way I could do this by myself. So I just want to highlight Laura Lee Neviker, our senior budget analyst, Allison Sabin, another budget analyst, and Jen Nielsen, budget analyst. We also have Crystal Michaelis, who's not with us today, but she does a lot to help us with this process. So, everyone at the table should have a book. Okay. You just hang on and hang in there with me. Let's page through it. So, first of all, like Jason said, it really is twofold. It's to present the final budget for FY25 and then also present the tentative budget for FY26. Within the budget book, there's about 5 main sections. It's the executive summary. Well, we'll be going through all these sections. But it consists of the executive summary, the organizational section, that I'll go into more detail, but the financial section, which really includes the numbers of all the funds, also with summary statements and a 3-year forecast for all the funds. And there's also an informational section, which when we populate the informational section, we get a lot of help from the accounting team to do that as well. But it helps populate a lot of the other reports within the whole budget report. And then we have a glossary at the end to help define terms and acronyms that are used throughout the budget report. So if you have questions, please ask, and you can stop me at any time. So, But if you go ahead and just turn to page 9, page 9 highlights the very first, it's the beginning of the executive summary, and it highlights in the first paragraph the years that most reports within this budget book cover. So it covers actual audited figures from FY 22, 23, 24. They cover final amended budgets for FY 25 and then tentative budget numbers for FY 26. And much like your board reports that you receive every month, the budget book is organized by fund. And the fund has several different categories within them. I tried to make it a little bit more clear with putting it on the slide. Governmental funds are covered from all the way from general funds down to school activity. And within that, there are 3 major funds. General, debt service, and capital outlay. Those are some where a lot of the money is. Then we have other funds, which are the special revenue funds, which include nutrition services, non-K-12, foundation, and then also student activity. Student activity is everything that's going through the schools. Proprietary funds, which should be self-sustaining, are industrial insurance, which is workman's comp, and then school services, which also includes the warehouse that we have in our district. And then the final fund that is included in the budget book is a fiduciary fund, which covers our trust fund. Okay. If we go to the next one, the executive summary has a lot of helpful information, and the nice thing about the executive summary, it is what it is. It's a summary. And I'm going to go through 3 charts right now that summarize a lot of the budget book and everything that covers it. So I think it's a good place to start to try to get an idea of what all is within the budget book. The first one is a summary of the revenues. If we go through, and what I'd like to do is hit the line items that have the biggest change. And what I'm looking at is the last, you're on page 13 right now. You turn to page 13 and you look at the chart that says all district fund summary of revenues. Look at the last column, like the second column from the left. Right, sorry, thank you, on my left. That's why he's here. But this is showing the change between final budget 25 and tentative budget 26. And you can see that there's a big change within the general fund. So if you put your hand, kind of your finger in page 13, and then also turn back to page 112 and 113. It's a little bit easier to kind of see where some of the differences are. This gives a lot of detail on the revenue for the general fund. If you look at, there's 3 components, 3 major components to the revenue that's going in. There's local sources, state sources, and federal sources. The biggest contributor to the change in the increase in revenues in the local source can be seen on the 3rd line, earnings on investments. We're projecting about a $3.3 million increase there. So that contributes into that $36 million increase. If you go to state sources, there's a lot going on in this. There are some programs that are discontinued. There are some that have reduced, but overall the contributors to an increase are from the WPU, which is on the 1st line, which shows about $17 million increase. And then if you go down to kind of midway through the other state revenue heading, there's Teacher and Student Success Act, which is TSSA. That will be going up about $6 million, if I'm looking at this right. Also right above that, school trust lands, that is going up about $1 million. And then if you go down a little bit further, you see educator salary adjustments. And that will show about a $7 million increase. So all those, it kind of explains where that increase on the summary page is coming from. Now the federal source overall is decreasing in most categories. But if you remember last year we had a big cut in Title I. And this year they're kind of bringing that back up a little bit. So if you look over on page 113, it says ESSA Title I. And if you look over to 25 and then also 26, you see that that's going up about $3.4 million this year. So that is a good way to kind of visualize that increase on the 1st line for general fund.
And B, just to clarify, that's like a partial restoration.
Yeah.
That's not
Yes.
like an
Right.
increase. It's really like a
Restoring
restoration.
it back
Yeah.
to where it was.
Yeah, and it didn't go back to
No.
the 9 million.
No,
so.
it didn't. So they're trying, I guess.
So good.
Thank you, Annalise.
Yeah, Annalise fought hard for that. I was looking at my notes of this presentation last year, and we talked about that last year, so it's good. Any questions on that? That's a big one. Okay, if you go back to page 13, and you go ahead and look at the second one is debt service. That's going down just simply because we don't need as much revenue because our debt's going down for GO bonds. So we'll see that decrease each time. Capital outlay is pretty consistent, but I wanted to mention it just because it is a big part of our budget. Capital outlay, the tax rate for capital outlay went down slightly, but it balances itself out by the property taxes going up. It's like revenue equalization, and so it keeps that pretty consistent.
And the big key there, when we look at the fund balance there, that 87 million, that's just what's coming in pretty much from property tax. When we sell the lease revenue bonds next month, that doesn't come in as revenue, but as other sources. So it'll come in as a different line, but then be available to use as an expenditure.
Okay, then the next line item I just wanted to show on nutrition services, that's also a large amount. We're just being conservative in that, not knowing what the participation rate's gonna be for lunches, breakfast, and also some federal funding's less in that category as well. Then the very next one, non-K-12, also went down. That again is being conservative as far as enrollment in preschools, and there was a $400,000 grant that was not awarded on a federal level for that, so we tried to account for that. And then if you just look down to student activity, that's showing a $900,000 decrease in revenue, and that's obviously because of recent legislation just limiting school fees. Any questions on that? All right, if you look at page 14 and we go to expenditures, it's kind of the same thing. You'll see an increase in expenditures, same column for the change. Under the general fund, they're showing a 62.8 increase in expenditures. We have about 89.2% of the general fund expenditures is for salary and benefits. And a lot of that amount is exactly that, for salary and benefits. Group insurance has increased, and so that's all counted in there. As well as steps and COLA that we've provided for the accounting for the employees. Again, you'll see debt service going down in expenditures just because the principal and interest are going down as well. This is where you start to see capital outlay increasing due to the issuance, pending issuance of the lease revenue bonds and the construction of the high school in Saratoga and the elementary school in Eagle Mountain. We're just starting to budget for those things, and so that's starting to come into the increase in those expenditures. The nutrition services shows a decrease in their expenditures, but that's really kind of a domino effect. If you look back to the final budget for FY25 in that column, at the end of this year, the nutrition services has purchased additional equipment that has been needed, and so their expenses have gone up in FY25. They're not planning that kind of expenditure in FY26, so it's just naturally going down. We'll talk more about that fund balance when we get to fund balances. And then the foundation, the expenditures are increasing. There's been some donations that were given in previous years that we're now spending, and so that is part of that math curriculum, I believe, from Texas Instruments. And then again, we're just projecting that student activity expenditures will go down again because of the fees being limited. Any questions on that one? Okay, if you want to turn over to page 16, one more summary. Okay, this is the summary of fund balances. And the first line item shows the general fund going down again, just kind of again because of the increase in COLA and steps and group insurance, but also in the federal funding, I didn't mention it when we were over on that page, but federal funding for SPED has gone down, and we're continually trying to support SPED in that effort, so that that's part of that contributor as well. So, I know.
Wow, they've never met their obligation in the first place, so that's discouraging.
So. Okay, debt service, again, that fund balance going up just because our requirements or needed amount for that is not as great with our balances going down, but we're also pulling in property tax, which may lend to the increment conversation that Jason will have later. So that's all part of that amount going up at this point. Capital outlay, this is where you really get to see the issuance, the effects of the issuance of the lease revenue bonds. This is where this comes in, where we projected that. That's just, we'll be accounting for those amounts coming in. So, nutrition services fund balance is showing a decrease. There is a requirement from the federal level that the fund balance for nutrition services should be in the range of 3 months of average expenditures. So it's quite high right now, and that's just a effect from COVID and the U.S., just funding that came in for nutrition services during the COVID years, and we're now trying to bring that fund balance back down. Nutrition services is really aware of it, and they're trying to spend their money down. It's not as easy as it sounds sometimes, but that is part of that, and we're starting to get back in the range of where we should be. We still have a ways to go. Based on 3 months of expenditures, their fund balance should be around $7.86 million. So they still have a ways to go, but you can see, looking at the previous years before that, that it's coming down. And we're glad about that. Okay, the foundation, again, just with the expenditures that are coming in and maybe not the same level of donations coming in, expenditures going out, not the same level of donations coming in, the reason for that fund balance going down. And again, student activity, it's the same explanation, just knowing that the legislature has limited fees that we can collect, and so we're trying to be conservative when we estimate for those amounts. The industrial insurance, in FY24, we brought down the percentage from 0.75 to 0.25 of what we collect for industrial insurance, workman's comp. And we have had some larger claims in the last couple of years that contribute to that also. The last summary in the executive summary, the chart just on the second half of page 16 is for tax levies, but I'm going to let Jason talk more about that when he gets to that point. Anything else you want to mention?
A couple of things on this slide. If you're looking at the total line on the fund balances, it gets a little harder to read because you've got, you're going up and then down, and there's wide swings. If you look just at the general fund, you can see that we've been increasing that at a slow rate, the 106 to 120, 133, and the amount that's in the actuals for FY24, that 133 million, is about 15% of our annual budget. We've set aside about 5% for kind of economic stabilization. Then we have other things that are in an assigned fund balance. There's also a little bit for the OPEB trust that's not in the trust but in the general fund. But you can see, if you look at the capital outlay, that's where you get the wide swings, because that's where money comes in from selling lease revenue bonds. And so we go from 46 up to 113, spend it down building schools. So it goes 93, 49 back up. So looking at each fund individually really helps to be able to see what's going on there. Also, with the debt service, we've planned for 2 years in a row to spend that down by reducing the increment by 3 to be able to bring that down.
Which is really fortunate that we have the fund balance to be able to do that, which will come into Jason's discussion later too.
B, I had a question, just
Yeah.
going back into the insurance part of that.
Yeah.
Because we know that the premiums have gone up, and I think that's one of the best things about Alpine is that our teachers don't feel it because we absorb that cost for them.
Right. So,
But, I think I remember someone saying that a lot of it went up because you had mentioned because we have used it.
the utilization rate.
Utilization part of it, but is there a differentiation between the health and the mental health on that? Is it the mental health aspect that's gone up? Julie, do you remember? Someone
Yeah.
told us about that.
It's both.
It's both?
Yeah.
It's all combined.
It's, yeah, I mean, it's all in one bucket because mental and physical are all in one bucket. But yes, both of them have gone up.
And is that part of the reason that we saw a switch this last fall with how we've done insurance a little bit?
So we were at, I believe in the past, we were at almost 100% utilization rate. And it's come down to about 96. With the changes that we made with Gardner, the utilization rate from what we're hearing from EMI, it's working with the changes that we've made. But anything over 93% utilization is when our renewals are
Yeah.
going to go up continually. So we're really trying to bring that back down. So, but this year the renewal rate's about 8.3 million, which is less than last year.
Thank you.
But I know that, you know, part of our goals is to retain good teachers, and so I think part of that is that we have older teachers at retirement, and so does that also play into the higher cost and higher use, that we're retaining teachers?
I think it's
the way we
really
want to.
interesting if everybody could listen to the presentations that EMI give and all the data that they're giving for those. It's amazing the detail that they come through. It could be older teachers. It just could be someone who has some, you know, medical situations that they have to address. But they have details on that, and obviously there's a lot that goes into that. But you're right. I mean, it could be just a younger person with a medical
It could
history.
still be an expensive, yeah.
Anything else? Okay, if we go into the organization section, if you turn to, well, first of all, the organization section, you've got history and local economy of the district. If you want to read through that with your late night reading, it's really exciting.
It was interesting.
You've got accounting and budgetary policies, but then if you turn to page 39, Jason kind of alluded to this. Bottom part of 39, I just always like to highlight this part because it's the budget calendar. And it starts in October, and then if you turn over to page 40, it goes all the way to August. And really, it really doesn't stop. But this is just kind of interesting because you can see what we do as the budget process goes through the year and what we're doing at different parts of the year for that. If you go to pages 43 through 45, that gets more into the account structure that we use in the district and explains different parts of functions and objects. And I'm going to go into that in just a minute in a little bit more detail. And then another part of if you'll turn to page 49, that is the organization chart. Recent changes I just wanted to note this, recent changes have been made, but due to time constraints, we haven't included those changes in this version of the budget book, but we will have them by the August version of the budget book and just include those changes that we've shown. And then if you just turn over to page 50, everything that's on that organizational chart, we've put in a little bit more detail as to what each part of the district leadership team does. The first section there on page 50 is obviously the Board of Education. Every part of the DLT team also has a section just like this where it has an overview of what they do, accomplishments that they've had this past year, and then objectives for next year. So you could look through each of those. That's something that everybody writes up every year. And then the last part of each department section is showing their FTEs for that department, that program, and then also the expenses under that part. All right. All right, let's go to the financial section. If you'll go to, let's see, page 78. When I first started learning about the budget book, it was actually really fun for me because it all matched. When we get done the budget book, or we're trying to get done in tick and tie, we're doing that by object and function. And we match totals by object and also by function. And so I just want to explain that a little bit more. But object and function totals are shown in expenditure details throughout the budget book as well as summary statements. So if you look at page 78 and 79, just as an example, 78 is reported by object, as you can see in the title, and in the kind of middle of it says expenditures by object, and then on 79 is shown by function. But if you look down at the bottom of the page, all those totals match. So it's the same amount, but it's different ways to report the information. So what are objects and functions? That's where it gets a little bit more fun. Functions, we talked about it in Finance Committee today, so I wanted to include it in this, but if you haven't seen a ASD account string, that's on the slide up here, that's the account string. Every account number has that many numerals in it, and they represent something different for each part of it. The first part's a year, next part's a fund, next part shows location, next part is a program that we're reporting on. Next part is a function. This is where function and object come into play. And the next part is employee ID. There are some legislative accounts that need to be reported by employee. So there is a section for employee ID. The majority of accounts that we use, we don't put the employee numbers in there, but there are some that we do need that from. And sequence is just that last SQ is a sequence number. It allows us to be a little bit more specific on each account. So for example, this account that I'm showing as an example is an account from FY25. It's from the general fund, which is Fund 10. It's being reported from AF High, which is 704. That's the location number for AF High. That is the TSSA program, 5678. The function is 1000. So function says what type of expense it is, or what type of revenue source it is, or what type of balance sheet item it is. So this function is saying 1000 is an instructional function. It's saying this expense is for instruction to students. And then object says, well, what kind of expense is it? Or what kind of revenue it would be. This object is saying 0610 is supplies. So this is saying this is supplies used in TSSA for instruction. Okay? So function says what it is, object, well, function, what type it is, object, what is it? Are there any questions on that?
SQ again was what?
Sequence. So if AF High wanted to have another supply account in there for their instruction and just say, well, we want supplies for science or something like this and this, or we want it for math or something like that. It's just another way to just distinguish and report differently and have more reporting information. So one could be sequence 01, but still supply account, one could be sequence 02. Okay. Another way to look at it is with this next chart. If you go to page 120. So this is by object and by function. They're still the same total, still the same pie. But the object is, what is it? Well, it's purchase services, or it's benefits, or it's supplies, or it's salaries. That's the pie chart showing that. And then by function, well, what is it being used for? It's being used in transportation or general services, school admin or district admin. That's how we're reporting those two. Okay. Okay, if you go back to page 113. So 113, the bottom half of 113 is showing the general fund expenditures by object. It's just that section of the page. All of it's reported. But then if you page over to 114, 115, 116, 117, those are the same expenditures but by function. So there's more detail there. But if you were to look at the totals on page 113 with the totals on page 117, they're the same. I just hope that helps you as you're looking through the budget book to say, okay, there's all these charts and reports. It's just a different way to look at them and for you to have more information on how the funds are being used. One thing I wanted to point out on 116, there's a big jump there and I just want to explain why. So on page 116, the total, the second bunch of accounts. There's total district admin support, if you see that on the left. And then if you go under final budget of 2025 and the budget of 2026, there's a big jump there from 5 million to about 11 million. That is where we are putting the amounts for, we have under legislation that we need to provide $60 per student in each of the new districts. So we're setting aside that money, and that's where we have put that money. So that's the big jump right there. That is where that was, came just over $5 million to provide that $60 per student. And that's where that is. So if you're asked, like, why is there that big jump in district admin support? That's where it is. And we will, go ahead.
Are you doing that over time, that $60, or is it?
Per year.
It's due January 1. We're budgeted for the year, but the legislation says by January 1 of
But
this.
to make that first payment, okay.
So is it gonna live in that account then?
Not forever.
Or we can open new accounts for that?
When you say account, you mean like in accounts in Alio or in
Yes.
bank account?
I don't know, I'm just.
There are 3 funds. There's Fund 11, 12, and
So
13.
I heard that they're going to stay inside of our budget.
Correct.
But
Yes.
they'll be separated out. So that they-
Separated so we can track and be able to put those
Yeah.
things.
Okay.
When we report to the state, it'll all go as Fund 10, but we'll be able to distinguish them by different funds in our accounting system to be able to track those.
Okay, just a couple more pages. If you'll turn to page 121, just talk about debt service for a minute. And I know Jason's going to get more into this in a minute. But just wanted to show that debt service, each year, I just did it a couple weeks ago, we report to the county how much we need in revenue to make our principal and interest payments on our GO bonds. And so they determine the tax rate based on how much we say that we have obligations for. But in the past years, we've taken that fund balance and been able to decrease increments for that tax rate. So if you look at the fund balances for the debt service under 24 to 25, you'll see a decrease in that. And that is because instead of using that full tax rate to pay for our debt service, we're cutting the tax rate and using fund balance to pay for those obligations instead. So that is the reason for the decrease there. Okay, and then finally, if you turn over to page 164, another part of the financial section is forecasts. And I will be honest, when we were preparing this, it was kind of a awakening of the reality of our situation for this, because in the past we've always had 3 years of forecasts, but for FY 28, 29, you'll see they're all zeros. So just due to the split, that's why those are zeroed out. But across on the right side of, again, these are reported by object and function. So those in the 164 and 165, you'll see that the totals match. But the projected growth rates are shown on the right-hand side. And then the assumptions on the bottom of the page explain really why we're using the growth rates that we are and the rationale that we use to use those growth rates for the projection of forecasts. Okay, and then the last section, the second to last section, is the informational section. We use a lot of this section you also see in the ACFR. We have a lot of help from our accounting team to help prepare this. It's a lot of statistical information, it's property tax rates, it's the biggest employers, it's capital assets, it's graduation rates. There's just a lot of statistical information that again leads into other parts of the budget report. And it's great if you love numbers to just go check that out and see where we're getting a lot of those a lot of that statistical information from. And then the last section is the glossary, which is again just where we have definition of terms and acronyms that we use throughout the report. That covers that. Any questions?
So I saw the SPED revenues. Is there a place that summarizes the SPED expenses? sorry, I should have
Nope, that's
talked to you
okay.
beforehand.
That's all right.
Could you get back to me if you
The sped expenses, it's pretty, there's a lot to the sped expenses. Come on, Allison. In particular, they're all part of this whole thing. So it's not broken out individually with that. You see the revenue side just because we're bringing it from the federal side for revenues. But a lot of the sped expenses are mixed in like salaries. They're all part of the salaries mixed within. But if you want to have further detail on that, we can definitely do that.
Yeah, one of the things we're doing in USBA this year is trying to ask the legislature to fill
Yep.
the sped
Yep.
expenses. So
Yep.
we need to know exactly how much do we spend, so we know how much we would need additionally from legislature.
Okay, yeah.
But it's not emergency,
Okay.
but sometimes.
No, it is.
I know it may be hard to tease out, but
No.
if we could do it, it would be better.
We can do it because we have it by program. We just don't break anything out in the budget book by
Okay.
program.
Okay.
But that's the nice thing about that whole account string is we can then
Right.
Pull it out.
pull out what we need.
Okay, thank you.
Before I jump in, great job, B.
Yes, excellent job.
Before I jump into the property tax, just wanted a few things on here just to note. So if we go back to page 14 and 16, just kind of a summary of what we're looking at the budget. So page 14, when we're looking at the expenditures, we can see that the FY26 budget. So the total budget with all funds listed there is about 1.3 billion in the funds, and 953 million of that is in the general fund. So 71%, that's where everything operationally happens there. 71% of our budget is in the general fund. And that 7% increase, like B was saying, aligns with what we had in increases in COLA and health insurance. When we go to page 16, the fund balances, we can see most years, so the final budget of 25, we're projecting to add about $15 million to the fund balance, which sounds like a lot, but it's really only about 1.25% to 1.5% of the overall budget just in the general fund. And then looking at the amount there, the 11.7, that's right now that in that second to last column, the 11.7 million is is our budgeted deficit for FY26. And usually at this time we do have a budgeted deficit because when we're budgeting for expenses, we're saying we think it's going to be within this range, but we're going to put the very worst case so that the expenditures are the highest. And with the revenue, we know that some certain range, we're going to put the most conservative there, and knowing that there's going to be more revenue than we put in here and less expenditures, hopefully. But if worst case happened in both expenditures and revenue, we'd pull from fund balance about 11.7 million. But if you look back, at the end of FY24, we were at 133 million. We're going to add 15 million. If we took 12 million away, we'd still be higher than we were currently at the fund balance levels. And also in that 11.7 million is the 5 million of the $60 per student. So that's not coming from something in the regular budget. We have that in budget or in fund balance from when the board went through truth and taxation last August. It was mainly for FY26 items. So the things that remain in FY25, we're going to be able to use that for those $60 per student items. Any thoughts or questions there?
So part of the reason that we over predict expenditures is because if any area we overspend, we then have to go back and amend the budget. So part of the reason we kind of over predict is so we don't have to come back and amend the budget every time somebody spent $1.42 over what was allotted in that
And
area.
especially that's a great point. In the FY26, we're trying to get that there, but especially in the final FY25, in the expenditure ones, we are going to set those to where we cannot go over. Because if we go over in any fund individually, we can get a finding in our audit. So even those final expenditures for FY25 are going to be higher than we expect because we don't even want to get to the 99 percentile of spending that. Hopefully it's somewhere in the 92, 95 of the percent, knowing that we won't go over that amount.
One more thing, Jason, too, and I just want to thank the board for being patient. But it's a hard timeline. I think we've talked about this before, but we're required, once we get these done, we're required to post to our website by June 1st, the budget book. So we try our best to do that, but we don't actually get some of the tax rates until June 10th. Ish. So it's kind of backwards, but we do try to get that up to you and on the website by June 1st, which we're required to do. But then we have a really quick turnaround between when those tax rates, like the tax rates really just got final, like the ones that we have, the final ones we received were Thursday. So we dug into it hard until late Wednesday and we printed Monday morning. So it's a really quick turnaround. I wish it wasn't that way. So you had more time to look at it on a more of a final format, but we do have several versions, and this is just version 2 of probably 4. So anyway.
Okay, I'm going to go quickly through this on property tax. So the slides are here. You've also received those as a PDF. So these, as we were talking about that, when we were preparing the budget book, we have to estimate what we think the rates are going to go to. So these are the rates. These are last year's. So the FY25 is the tax year 24, and then we estimated these. So we were conservative. We didn't have much of a tax rate value growth. We had 0% and also growth, and we estimated that the rates would go down by 8.7%. And then this is what actually happened. So like in the capital levy, we projected it would be 1410 for the estimated, but it actually went down to 1329. Which when we're looking at those, as those go down, they don't necessarily hurt us in revenue. As they go down, that means the values went up by that amount. So the value, and I'll show that on a future one, but our value overall, the tax value, went from about 52 billion to 57 billion for the taxable value for the area, for the district. So some highlights down here at the bottom. The overall tax rate value, like I was saying, the 52 billion to 57 billion is a 9.5% increase. Certified tax rate decreased by 6.7. The board local levy decreased by more than that because it's tied to the charter school levy. So the two together, and because the per pupil value in our district went up significantly, the charter school levy increased by 36.2. So that 36.2, it's hard that pulls from our board local levy, but it's nice that our per pupil revenue is gone up for the district area. The debt service is still an estimate there. They haven't got us the final yet, but that's about where we're at. And we still don't have the basic rate, but as the basic rate comes in, if it's higher, we'll receive more revenue through property tax, but less from the state, or vice versa. So they'll just equalize based on our amount calculated by the WPU value. Here's a chart that's in the book of where we're sitting right now on the history of the tax rate. So you can see as values have gone up, the rate's gone down. There's been some increases in rate as we've gone through truth in taxation. So the total rate is the 5646 that's currently, and that doesn't assume anything for truth in taxation. That's just the current rate that we're estimating right now. A total decrease of rate of about 8.15%. Here is a quick chart showing what values have done. So this is the adjusted taxable tax rate value. So just in FY21 we were about 31 billion. Now it's at 57 billion. You can see, and this is the percent growth each year. So from FY20 to 21 we grew by 12%. Here was the biggest as it grew from 34 to 47, and now these are more in line with kind of the long-term history of things, but looking at this past one, it was about double the growth of last year. And of that 9.5% growth, 3.4% of that was from new growth. So you have the values that are on the books for existing things, and that went up from the 52 to the 57, but of that amount, 1.8 million of that was from new growth in the district. An interesting thing here, the gray line also shows the inflation rate. So a few years ago, so worried about the year-over-year inflation rate. Those have come back down to more normal values. Less than 3% is, between 2 and 3 is where the Fed would like those to be. Quick thing here on the 20 increments. We've shared this before. There was some legislative change this year. So in the past, the voted and board were looked at combined with the 20 increments, but also separately. So the voted, we could be at, the max we can be at for voted is 16 increments. each time we raise it to 16 and values go up, the rate's going to go down. And there's been a 5-year hold harmless from the state that as that's gone down, you still get the amount of revenue as if it was at the 16 increments. The board needs to be at a 4 increments, and we've raised that above because each time we've gone through truth and taxation, we've added it there to bring in more unrestricted revenue for the board, the district to be able to use. The change now is those won't be looked at individually, and there's only a 1-year look back. So it's going to change some things, especially for our district, but it's going to become simpler in the calculation of that. So the nice thing is last year and currently for FY26, we're going to be above the 20 increments, which we need for the guarantee. So the board will just need to look at that as those rates come down. If you're below that, you aren't guaranteed other than 1 year. So if it went down in FY27 below the 20 increments, we'd still be held harmless at what the last one was, or at the 20 increments. But then after that, it would fall down and not be able to get that guarantee.
This is to encourage boards to do their part in generating property tax revenue.
Okay. So this are some increment options, kind of the recommendation here. In the last 2 years, what the board has chosen to do through truth and taxation is to do 4 increments in capital, 3 in the board levy, and then reduce the debt service by 3 to get a net of 4 increments up. This year the recommendation is, so for many reasons. One, right now we have about 6.4 increments that are in the capital fund that go just to a building fund. And that just generates to be able to build buildings with cash rather than to have to bond. That was kind of the thought, to build that up and to build an elementary every year or two, just without having to do any interest on that. So right now, if 4 increments were added, the board chose to do that in August, the additional amount would be about $23.2 million per year of new revenue that would be going to that building fund. So 2 years worth of that is going to be close to $50 million. The 6.37 increments, if nothing else is decided to use from the building fund, will be in the $70 million range at the time of the district split. So there's some funds available for startup costs for each of the districts as that gets divided. Another option is if 4 increments are added in capital in a couple years when new boards are there, they can choose to move 2 or 3 of those, or if there's the 6.4 plus these 4, there's about 10.5 increments. A new board could say, we want to take half of those. Let's say we take 5 of those increments and move them from the capital to the board or the voted to be able to bring in more funds, more budget for operations. So it gives some flexibility. What this also does, as the debt service rate is going down, it captures that. So looking at that, if right now, if there wasn't something done, people's property taxes may go down, but they need to go back up at the time of the split. So it's kind of stabilizing that, as saying we're just keeping that steady instead of a decrease and a spike in those years. So 4 increments, the cost on the median home value is about $114 annually, or $9.50 monthly. And 4 increments increase is a 7% increase on their truth and taxation notice. So if 4 increments was decided, if we have to let the county know next Monday what the possibility would be, the max that we would increase this rate. It's not setting the rate because that would be decided in August. But on truth and taxation notice, it would show that 7% increase on the truth and taxation notice. Right now, the GeoBond debt, we showed that it's falling from like 64 million to like 44 million that we owe for this year. We've already taken that down 3 increments this last year. So there's not as much of a jump down, but it's about 1.4 increments going down from 931 to 791. That won't show up anywhere on anybody's tax notice, but it's just something to keep in mind from last tax year to this tax year. Additionally, there's, as B was showing, there's more fund balance in the debt service that could be decreased. So if we decrease by 3 increments and use up some of that fund balance, Then if there really was 4 increments in capital and reduce the debt service by 3, then a net of 1 total increment up. And the cost on the median home value for that is $28.60 annually, or about $2.40 monthly. And 1 increment is about 1.8% tax increase. So really looking at that, if there's 4, you have the 1.4 coming off, but it's going to be hard to explain that. But just saying, if there's the 4 increments added and we reduce by 3 in the debt service, it's that net 1. The important part with the debt service, we can't let the county know by next Monday that we're reducing or might reduce the debt service by 3, because they just tell us the rate that's needed for the payments. To do that, so it won't show up on the tax notices, that possible 3 down. It would just have to be explained, and then if that was decided by the board in August, again, it's just explaining this. Yes, it's 4 up here, 3 down here, so it's going to be this net, but it won't show up anywhere on tax notices.
If you were in charge of tax notices, would you fix that?
I'm glad I'm not in charge of that.
Because
He would.
it's just a point of misunderstanding every year.
So the summary, the recommendation from the staff is
4 increments in capital,
Which nets about 1.
which would net about 1 with the, and there's room in the
terms
debt
of
service.
effect.
Yes.
The net for the district would be the full 4, but the effect on the taxpayer would be the equivalent of 1.
And the individual property tax holder, looking from last year, from tax year 24 to 25, should see a slight decrease even with that, with going up 4, down 3, even though it's a 1 up, because the debt service is going to fall 1.4 also, but it won't show up on the tax notice because they don't show last year's rates.
Right. So if you incorporate that 1.4, then, and you do 3 increments in debt service, then it's actually a 0.4 reduction.
0.4 reduction, correct.
And my preference has always been to try to keep us from going down.
Yeah,
Because
don't dip.
once it goes down, it's really hard to claw back up. And so this feels like we are staying kind of the same, but with maybe a 0.4 decrease.
Right.
Well, and I think what Jason was showing too, with the amount of increments that we need to hold, we're at whatever it is, the 21, maybe 22 next year, we're really close to that 20
Yeah.
increment mark. And so we're also kind of floating where if housing prices, increase too much, then we're going to sink below
Right.
and then be forced to raise above the 20. So
Yeah.
we're sitting in, the goal is to keep the rate kind of here and not have these big swings and fluctuations.
And repeating on that, like if a board, like, wouldn't have to happen next year with this board because there's the 1-year hold harmless.
Right.
But if it was like the next year, whenever you're moving, if you decide, well, let's move 2 increments from capital to the board, and that's all you do, there's no truth in taxation, because those 3 combined, as long as it stays the same, there's no.
Equalizes.
So it really sets the new boards up in 2 ways. One, they don't necessarily need to go through truth and taxation, and they can adjust those funding sources to meet their needs. And 2, it creates a revenue source for them to address it.
Yeah, because that revenue will come in as, it's not as, we don't have some need right now in just in capital, it's more of building up for, this future elementary or this rebuild of this high school, kind of starting those things.
Anything else, Jason?
That is our last slide. Any other questions?
Do you need approval or something on this
You have to turn in
truth and
something.
taxation thing in a week? We need to vote on something.
Well,
It's not here, it's here, board meeting.
So it'll be a board meeting.
Yeah.
Not here.
But if we wanted to have a discussion on this before board meeting, this is the time to do it.
on the amount that we let the county know, yeah, but the thing is, when we let that know, so if we say 4 increments in capital, we can't do 5, 6, or 7, but we could do 4, 3, 2, 0, or 1, 0. So any of those, you just can't go above. So I don't think it needs to be the specifics in the vote. Just we'll talk about approving the tentative budget with this rate and then having the hearing in August.
But you're comfortable with a 4 increment increase?
Thank you.
Okay, Well done. That's a lot of information to share. Thank you for your outstanding work. You do a wonderful job, and it's recognized by state and national agencies that look at your work and recognize that as outstanding. So we recognize it here as outstanding, but it's nice also to have that third-party validation that what you do is just remarkable work. So well done.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Dr. Ruiz, I believe we have a report from Student Support Services.
Yes.
Over to you to introduce the team.
All right. So we have Amy Sisam, who's our outgoing Director over Student Support Services, and Dr. Kim Jones, who is our incoming Director over Student Support Services, and they'll be co-presenting this report.
Do you want us just to stand kind of with us here, or where do you want us?
Yeah, here's one.
Right here? Okay, apologies, still using notes, for the struggling with that. I appreciate the opportunity to come share with you all. We were asked by Dr. Ruiz to come talk to you a little bit about our alignment with the board priorities for the past year and highlight some of the work we've done this year to help provide those supports so that students continue to thrive in Alpine School District. So we did put a lot of information in the folder, and you'll get the slideshow, and I put a lot of links to things in the notes. So we're gonna go pretty fast. So just know you can have that to go through on your own time.
Okay, so under student achievement, one of our goals really came out of feedback that we received from teachers and administrators that we were having a lot of issues with behavior out in our schools. And as you can imagine, that's not an easy fix. It's a complex issue. But our team is amazing, and they got started working on something that we call ASD's Behavior Support Toolkit. There's a paper copy in your file, and it's electronically on our webpage. The front page of that is a list of resources and tools for our teachers, and the back page is for administrators. And it really focuses more on systems and processes. So one of the aspects on that back page you'll see is this multi-tiered system of behavior support. And this is where anyone can come and look and say, perhaps maybe substance abuse or vaping is an issue at our school. That's for students that need a little more help and support. So you could go to tier 2, specific interventions needed. And this next page that you see on the screen would pop up, giving you links and resources for that. And Amy will share a little more about one of the resources and other prevention aspects that we have.
Awesome, thanks. So yeah, great segue, Kim. So one of the things that we worked on this year at the request of our school administrators was some support for substance use and vaping. So our team did create a bank of resources that are available for students and families, parents to use free of cost. We also created a couple of different courses that schools can administer as a consequence for behavior, but obviously to help change the behavior. So historically, we had been paying a third party to enroll students in courses, and the feedback was that they didn't really address the root causes of the behaviors. Our school administrators didn't find them super effective. So these courses give our school teams a chance to actually engage with the students in learning and identifying the root cause of the behavior and being able to individualize supports. So we've been piloting the courses this year at a couple of our junior high schools that had a high amount of offenses, and we've refined them through that process, and they will be available to all schools beginning in August. Another area that we've focused in this year is in bullying and harassment.
We've worked closely with our amazing legal team on revising the bullying policies. And we've also created some resources to go along with that. So our administrators were all given a decision tree that helps them identify if it is an incident of bullying, harassment, sexual harassment, or a lower level incident. We also have provided training for students. So all schools and students K-12 enrolled in and participated in a training course on bullying at the beginning of the year this year, which we think will help prevent further incidents.
Amy, can you clarify when you say all students participated? Can you say, like, was that through a thing on Skyward? Was
Yes.
it something? Okay.
So, not yes, it was on Skyward. Yes, I can clarify. That the elementary grade level bands received classroom lessons from their teachers, so we put them on Nearpod, and teachers were given lesson plans and delivered them that way. And then our secondary courses were on Canvas. And so students could either do those asynchronously on their own, or teachers had the option of leading their classes through those courses with materials as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're so welcome.
What's the time commitment there?
We made them intentionally less than 40 minutes so that they would fit in most secondary schools' intervention periods.
Then that brings us to our second goal in student achievement, which deals with our culture, climate, and connection survey. We worked for years with BYU to create a valid and reliable measure for our students to let us know how they felt about their dispositions and the conditions that we as the adults are trying to create around them for a safe environment. And we've had some really great success. All of our schools have been able to participate. We've had a really great rate of 80 to 90% parent consent on the opt-in. And this really allows us, it connects with the coherence map, which we love, and the idea that we want to help with the priority goals around connection at our schools. And so now we have data that helps to drive those decisions made at the school. And then we've also had, as part of our 3-year strategic plan, we want to support schools with their behavior needs in another way. We have had the author of Behavior Solutions, his name's Dr. John Hannigan, and this is a book that really incorporates the RTI pyramid just with behavior. How can we set up Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3 out in our schools? And we've been able to have 20 schools bring teams to his 3-day workshop so far. And we're excited to share that we have 10 more that we'll be doing next year. So our goal is that we're setting up all 3 districts with elementary and secondary schools that they can learn from once the reconfiguration happens. We also had the opportunity to meet with every elementary school teacher online 3 times for an hour this year, where we provided behavior strategies and tools to help support them in the classroom.
Okay, awesome. And thanks to curriculum for allowing us the space to, and recognizing, right, that behavior is learning. So we appreciated the professional learning time. All right, you can just go to the next one. So our priority on improving effectiveness of not only our own service providers, but administrators and teachers in the district. So in July, we did a training for our administrators on improving documentation across Alpine District. We also trained all of our service providers on that. Prior to the training, we worked with some of Scott's department and legal on revising our student information system so that it's more effective and we report more accurately. So we assign new roles and rights. For example, administrators now can add guidance and attendance notes. We also amended the codes that are in Skyward so they match federal and state reporting. and we removed some of the, what I like to call catch-all categories. We used to have one called general behavior, so if you're school admin, you know that if you didn't know where to put something, that's just kind of where it went, or maybe that was just me, but, and now we feel like our data actually reflects what is happening in schools, so we can, you know, kind of target and provide more interventions and find areas that are needed based on that.
Can I make a comment on this real
Yeah.
quick? Because I feel like the way you said this was kind of not paying tribute to how huge this was for our schools,
Thank
for our
you.
admin, who are working with students, and then on the parent end, being able to have something specific. And so I just want to say thank you, because I know this is a very big deal, and getting everybody on it was,
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe everybody else is not as excited by this, but this is a very big thing, so thank you for your work
Well,
to improve this process.
Thank you. I appreciate the enthusiasm, because you're right. I mean, it's all of these things we're highlighting. It took months and a lot of work to get to, but I do feel like we've turned a corner on documentation, and you can see it in our trends. Like we kind of cut down the presentation that we gave in a small group, obviously, 'cause I think it was 2 hours, but you can see the trends and how accurate the reporting is starting to get, even in year one. Okay, we also are in year one of what we call case management reviews. So this is a shift away from the traditional district disciplinary hearings. Case management guarantees that students receive due process by thoroughly reviewing the procedures followed at the school level and by examining all the evidence submitted by all parties. These reviews are conducted by a facilitator who is our Director of Safe Schools and Discipline, Dave Lund. They're made up of administrators who are highly trained, a consistent panel of administrators from around the district, of service providers, and of other personnel as needed, like special education, 504, Title VI. This team collectively determines appropriate and equitable outcomes for students. Our data in past years has not been favorable towards students with disabilities or students of color, and quite honestly, the same offense was disciplined for very differently across the district. So we're trying to bring this process in to provide better outcomes for all of our students. Case managers come each month. They receive training, and they take that training back to their schools to share. It helps them provide interventions and improve their practices for student behavior. They also spend time analyzing data and trends from around the district so that they can learn from each other what's happening, and so that we start to share our stories and really see equitable outcomes. So it's been a really positive experience. Both for schools and families report feeling more seen and heard in the process, and that it's less adversarial for families and for schools. And we are seeing through our disciplinary data and outcomes that we are making a positive impact on discipline for students. Hey, crisis response. And I told you, sorry, I'm just really shotgunning it. Boom, boom, boom. So here we go. So we have a district crisis response team, and our goal really is, as it says on there, to help communities through the grieving process, maintain a sense of normalcy, and foster healing. Something that was really important to us is that we empower school teams to be able to lead out crisis response at the school level with some support from our district crisis response team as needed. So we work closely with communications, and I appreciate Rich's help in that role. And we provide trainings to administrators at the district level and at the school level to our service provider leads and our individual service providers. It's been a particularly difficult year. We have had more student deaths and crises than we have had in past years. We have provided support now for 25 crises in Alpine District. It's hard, heavy work. I will say I'm grateful for my team that shows up and supports. And I just did an interview, Annalise doesn't know this, I just did an interview with USBE last week because they actually are going to highlight and recognize our crisis team for the work that we do in Alpine District this year in their upcoming communications. So, and then, thanks, my Vanna White. So we know that well-trained staff with the right tools and resources achieve the best outcomes for all students and for schools. So we prioritize training our service provider groups to build their capacity. Just some of the highlights of our training and professional development efforts this year are that we trained our school-based therapists on the substance use counseling. It's called Grief Challenges, but that has provided great support to schools, and all of our school-based therapists have been certified now. They're actually certified as substance use disorder counselors. Our school counselors were trained on an intervention. It's called BRISC, which stands for brief, I never can remember, something about brief response to intervention with school counseling. There you go, with school clinicians. So we actually started doing this a couple of years ago, and I'm really grateful because with new legislation, the BRISC model actually falls right in line and provides a lot of safety and clarity for our school counselors on what it is that they are allowed to do in school. And then our school nurses also have been providing more training to our schools, like Stop the Bleed is a big one, and they've been receiving training in substance use prevention themselves, so we've added that as well.
So one of our goals within stakeholder engagement is that we really want to help others understand the great things that our department is doing and how it can help everyone in the district. And so we've had several articles in All About Alpine highlighting our team. We've had the Eye on Excellence videos that have highlighted different aspects of our department as well. We've presented at Moments for Matters many times, and then something else we do to help with internal communications deals with all of the policies and guidance documents and ASD forms that you see listed here. And then we broke the cardinal rule of putting too much on a slide, but we did it on purpose. We wanted to show you, we won't discuss every bullet, but we wanted you to visually see. We provide professional development for various stakeholders, many teams, and lots of different content areas across the district. And we love the opportunity to be part of the teaching and learning that happens in ASD.
Okay, this is probably honestly my favorite part of my job, and I apologize if I pride myself on not being very emotional, but emotional for a couple reasons. It's my last board meeting. Last time I put on a suit to come to work today, and also this is just so near and dear to my heart. And when this job became available, this is the reason why I really wanted to get involved in student support services. So I included in your folder this little snapshot, but this is just talking about some of the work that our community outreach team is doing. Our goal of our community outreach team is to build strong this slide's just some examples of how all of our service providers work together to provide supports for families. So you can see on there all the different ways that we work together. And then the next slide is actually the work of our community outreach team. The goal of our community outreach team is to build strong partnerships between schools, families, and the broader community to support student success And we do this by increasing family and community engagement, by fostering trust and collaboration. We identify and address community needs and concerns, and we connect families with resources and support services so students come to school ready to learn with their basic needs met. The next two slides are just show you a little bit of the progress. There's a lot here, and I put an electronic link actually in the slides so you can look. But I do just want to say, can you go back to the oral one? So, or did it not get switched? Sorry. Michelle and I just were in our Forum Community Schools meeting today, and it's just so exciting to see the impact that this strategy has. Because what you see in those schools is that they are meeting and exceeding proficiency in literacy and math. They are showing improvement on their Culture, Climate, and Connection survey. They have more students enrolled in concurrent enrollment in CTE than they ever have before. So I just love what the strategy does to help our student learning. Since 2022, we've grown, we've added more members so that we're trying to service more areas in the school. Matt told me I could take some of this time, so I don't want you guys to be staring at me like I'm not taking all of it as he asked, but I will take a minute. Okay, but I really want to show you, and then McKinney-Vento, it's the first year in student services. We were able to hire a new coordinator and streamline processes. I think everyone can agree it goes much smoother, much quicker, and we help more families. This next slide, though, is my favorite because this is a picture. Can you switch the slide? Sorry. So it's a picture of the graduation at the adult English classes at Frontier. And I love this picture because I don't know if you can see in the picture, but families, we had 150 adults graduate from Frontier. We had 34 graduate from Westlake. It's the first year at Westlake. And I don't know if you can see in there, but right in the middle, a man's holding his baby, and there's some other kids in there. And I love this because to me, this illustrates why we do family and community engagement. Because quite honestly, like, the support and the services that we offer, they're more than just resources for families. I see them as a lifeline, and they actually are transformative. They can change the trajectory of people's lives and empower them and their families to thrive for generations to come. So it's something I'm so proud of and so proud to be a part of, and so grateful, quite honestly, that I got to step into this work. So that's my celebration of community outreach.
And then just as far as next steps, we just would really need to say in this moment, we're thankful for Amy and Annalise and your leadership in our department and all of the great work that's been accomplished in this time. And to let Joel know we're excited to have him on board as leading our team. We are excited to continue to create and to innovate and to help serve our students over these next couple of years so that they thrive, and we're also setting up 3 great new districts for the future so everyone can be successful. And we're just happy to serve in any way we can. Thank you so much for your time.
A couple things real quick. Amy and Dr. Jones, appreciate your work. A couple things that stand out to me. Many departments are data-driven, many are need-responsive, but few are data-driven and need-responsive. And I think it's incredible the work that you've done to be data-driven, but also respond to the needs. I think you're misnamed because it's student, family, administrative, teacher, employee support department. You don't just to support students, you support everyone that supports students. And it's just incredible work. You've been recognized by the state for some of the work you've done, rightfully so. And I think, Dr. Jones, as you set up, I think the challenge now is And I feel very confident that all three districts will have remarkable tools and frameworks to continue to support students at a high level, exceptional level. With a very lean department, when you compare what Alpine does in student services to other districts across the state, servicing 85,000 students, it's just really incredible, the work that you've done. Congratulations on that, and thank you so much for presenting. Dr. Jones, I think the board would be interested in the future in looking at what your structure looks like internally and how that could be replicated in future districts as those new districts come on and have their own student, family, teacher, employee, and administrator support department. Thank you. Okay, Scott, we have Matt here to present briefly on Title IX report.
Briefly. I will apologize up front. No, we're good. That's all we need. We're going to apologize up front. I texted Matt and said, hey, do you have a book, a binder, or a folder? And he goes, no. But we do have a presentation, and you did get these in board docs. So, Matt Norman is here. He's our district athletic director. He supports all the schools' athletic directors, manages things, runs things. A huge part of pays to run it. It directs meetings with our athletic directors to support all athletics across the Alpine School District. So I really appreciate him. He has a huge load to work with our schools, as our athletic directors do in each school, to keep things afloat and to keep us compliant with all the things and the new requirements coming in. What we're going to share with you is in the document you already have. This is House Bill 420 from 2022. It's a mandatory, it's a required reporting to at the beginning of each school year for the Title IX reporting mechanisms of any interscholastic sports. Currently, we have 26 sports in Alpine School District. 26 sports in Alpine School District. We're going to add a new one next spring, esports. And so we're just going to continue growing and growing, which is why Matt is so amazing to have. There are some specific things in this report I'll let Matt go through and do as he compiled this, how he compiled it, but we just appreciate him being here and sharing this.
Awesome. Thanks, Scott. It's good to be here with all of you. You all have this, so I'm not going to go through everything. Just a couple highlights. We have in Alpine School District 9,427 students that participated in sports during this 2024-25 school year, which is 44% of our student body, of the 84,000, whatever it is, which I think is remarkable, because we know that many studies indicate that when students are involved and connected to their school through sports, they do better academically. And I would say they learn many great lessons. You can also see, in terms of number of participants, we have more boys participating than girls, but I will say that this last year we went up 1% with our girls, which I think is awesome. We do offer one more sport for girls than boys, which we just kind of follow UHSA and what sports they offer. Couple other highlights I would just say are our athletic directors at our school provide all this information, and I just want to emphasize how critical their role has become at our high schools. I spent many years at Pleasant Grove High doing both an assistant principal role and basically the athletic director role, and it's really unsustainable for that model. And so I would just encourage, as we move down this path of reconfiguration, that we consider in all of the districts having athletic directors. And if anybody wants to talk more with me about that, I'd be happy to do that. Also on this, there's some questions. I'm not going to go over those because of time, but we want our schools to be giving the girls' sports the same amount of time in the main gym or on the football field for soccer. That's what these questions go over, and I think our schools do a great job to switch off in the gym for practices and things like that. So I don't have anything else if there's any questions, but you all have the report, and I don't want to continue at all just because everything's included in that document, and we're just required to submit this and to present this at a
question
board
right
meeting.
here.
I have a couple questions.
Okay.
I noticed like the percent of boys to girl athletes at Lone Peak, it was a lot more boys were competing than girls, but at their neighboring school, American Fork, it's the lowest and it's the most equal. Do you know why in such a close proximity we see such a huge swing in sports between boys and girls?
I don't. I mean, Lone Peak obviously does very well. They have a few programs that are low. I know their softball's low in numbers, which surprisingly American Fork just a few years ago couldn't even field a varsity softball team. So they've done good to get that program better, but I don't know. I'm glad you brought that up though, and I can talk to athletic directors and just see what they know about that.
And then another question I have, I noticed some of our high schools are able to run without putting any money into the athletics, and some are putting an extensive amount. Why do we have such a difference throughout the district?
I mean, the one, you'll notice this year Lone Peak in baseball and softball put $25,000. They were helping with some needs for facilities. That is rare, but that has to be reported. Schools have the choice whether or not they contribute. Athletics are run on fundraisers, to be honest with you. I mean, fundraisers and student fees. And so, again, just hearkening back to my time at Pleasant Grove, we tried to give a little bit to each program. It didn't even cover busing or officials. I mean, it's expensive.
I'll say one thing about the Lone Peak facilities. Followed up with Todd that's there, and knowing the facilities pretty well. That money was spent specifically to update some of the facilities that they're sustainable facilities, but they're not. When you go around to other facilities, you start seeing what others have. But there also is an increase for the softball team to put a batting cage in with netting. Netting's incredibly expensive, so when they redo some of the backstop things, that it makes it look nice, but it's also more functional, so you don't have to keep sewing holes in the net and all that kind of stuff. So they had some updates of facilities that they had the funds, but those were also matching funds that the community gave. Were able to help support those schools. But softball and baseball got it, knowing that was we didn't want to create a discrepancy there with the numbers. So they were very conscious of making sure it was even.
And these are choices that administrators make with respect to how much is much. Matt, is it true, my sense is that when there is a successful program, it kind of just increases the number of students that participate in it because it starts building a feeder program. So they have more kids. If they know the varsity team has been successful, then more sophomores will play, more juniors will play, and you just start getting more participation because it's attracting more people into that program from the student body and elsewhere. They're choicing into that area.
Absolutely.
So you see with Lone Peak and the success that they've had with their women's sports, it's just increased the number of total participants that they're drawing into those.
Actually, the data was opposite. At Lone Peak, 60% of their athletes were male and 40% were female.
Yeah.
Where at AF, it was like almost 50-50.
And I think you see that ebb and flow because of AF's success this spring in those sports as well. It's like track and field is an area where AF has done really well, and they have a lot of participants in that. So it depends on what sport is thriving.
I was just wondering if there was something sweet that American Fork was doing that could be emulated across schools to have more female participants.
Can I just ask, what does compliance look like in Title IX? Have we achieved it, or is it something you can force?
Well, with this report, if there's a 10% discrepancy in the number of sports offered between girls and boys, then you have to have an action plan, which we were not even close because we have one more for girls. In terms of, trying to get, I have seen a decrease, frankly, in a lot of areas with participation. Football, for instance, you're seeing slightly in youth a reduction in participants just because of concussions and head injuries, and parents are concerned about that. Some of our junior highs, they're not on this. we can barely fill the 9th grade basketball team for girls at many of our junior highs. And I'm not, I mean, I have my own theories, but I don't want to kind of get on my own soapbox about that.
Any other questions?
Okay, thank you so much. We're actually going to adjourn until our public hearing at 6 p.m. Thank you. For the Inverness development between Belmont Elementary, Ridgeline Elementary, Lehigh Junior High, Timberline Middle, Viewpoint Middle, Lone Peak High, and Skyridge High Schools. Seeing no comments, I declare the public hearing closed. We're adjourning this public hearing. And now we have to sit and wait. Okay, I'm going to declare the public hearing open for the possible boundary changes for the wildflower development between Vista Heights Middle School, Sage Canyon Middle School, Cedar Valley High School, and Westlake High Schools. No individuals have signed up, so I will declare the public hearing closed. We are adjourned from this public hearing. I'm going to declare the public hearing open for the fiscal year 25 final budget. We have no comments regarding the fiscal year 25 final budget, so I'm going to declare the public hearing closed. Okay, I'm declaring the public hearing open for the FY26 tentative budget.
Seeing no comments, I will declare the public hearing closed. thank you all for being here. I'm going to call the meeting to order. First item on our agenda is that we are going to say the Pledge of Allegiance, and that will be led by Dr. Annalise Ruiz.
Okay, repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next, we have our inspirational thought or reflection by Derek Farnes.
So a few years ago, as I was preparing a presentation for the transportation department, I asked my kids, what should I tell the bus drivers? As they knew I worked with the bus drivers and the bus attendants, and my 9-year-old at the time said, tell them where to drive to pick up kids and a map to school. Very, very smart. My 7-year-old said, drive safe. Also very smart. My wife, who probably doesn't want me sharing her age then or now, said, be nice, parents are watching. Also smart. And my 5-year-old, without hesitation, said to tell the bus drivers, quote, I love them. May we always remember why we do what we do. And on behalf of 5-year-olds starting kindergarten to 17-year-olds starting their senior year in high school, thank you to you board members, to you parents and community members, whether here in person or watching online, and to the thousands of district employees who day in and day out put their best forward to serve the students. I love them. Thank you.
That was awesome, Derek. You're definitely coming back to do that again. Okay, next up we have recognitions, and those will be led by Board Member Clement.
Okay. By the way, we used to have these teams come in to board meeting, and I think they like it a lot better now when we just honor them and then send their certificates to their schools, which will be given to the student athletes during their recognition ceremonies. So first of all, for Orem High, the 4A boys state track and field champions. American Fork, the 6A boys state track and field champions. Okay, you're keeping up with me? Okay. Now we're on girls. Okay. American Fork 6A girls state track and field champions. This is the first time in 6A history that both boys and girls teams have won in the same year. So that's pretty exciting for American Fork. Moving on to the American Fork 6A boys state tennis champions and the 6A boys state soccer champions. And that's also exciting to see American Fork High School's name so many times in here. Following that, we have Lone Peak 6A girls state golf champions. And finally, American Fork 6A baseball champions. So I'm just excited to see all of these students that have an opportunity to build teamwork, to have a great experience, and to excel in the sports that they're working on. So I think it'd be appropriate to give them all a hand of applause.
Okay, it's now time for community comments. And I don't think we have any community comments, so we're moving right on the agenda. Next up, we have approval of the minutes. I will accept or entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
I move to approve the minutes.
Okay, we have a motion by Board Member Lincoln. Do we have a second? I'll second. Okay, and with a motion by Board Member Lincoln, a second by Board Member Bateman, do we have any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Superintendent.
Board members, you have received your claims, the claims for the month, and I recommend that you accept the claims.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to accept the claims.
I move that we accept the claims.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion by Board Member Wilson and a second by Board Member Peterson. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Superintendent.
Yes, you've also received the routine business for the month. I recommend you approve the routine business.
Okay, do we have a motion for approving the routine business?
I move that we approve the routine business.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, so we have a motion by Board Member Beeson and a second by Board Member Lincoln. Do we have any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion passes unanimously. Superintendent.
Action items, we have the approval of the fiscal year 2025 final budget, and we recommend that you approve the budget from fiscal year 2025. And I'll appreciate Jason Sundberg, business administrator, and his team and the work they've done on the 2025 and 2026 budget, and he's available to answer any follow-up questions on the 2025 final budget.
I move that we approve the fiscal year 2025 final budget.
So we have a motion by Board Member Wilson. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, and a second by Board Member Peterson. Any discussion? This was a hot topic for study session, so it was discussed. Okay, with a motion by Board Member Wilson and a second by Board Member Peterson, all in favor of approving the fiscal year 25 final budget, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, please say nay. Okay, that passes unanimously. Superintendent.
We also have the fiscal year 2026 tentative budget, and I believe there is a resolution that Board
Yes.
President needs to read with respect to that, but I recommend that you approve the tentative budget for fiscal year 2026.
I move that we approve the tentative budget for the fiscal year 2025-26 with a recommended tax rate of 0.005553. The recommended tax rate does not include the charter local levy of 0.000093, which is set by the Tax Commission, and may change due to the certified tax setting process. The recommended tax rate will be finalized at a Truth in Taxation hearing, which is scheduled for August 5th, 2025, after 6 p.m.
Thank you, Board Member Wilson. Do we have a second? Okay, with a motion by Board Member Wilson and a second by Board Member Bateman, any discussion?
This was the recommended in our study session. Jason, if you want to just summarize for our public what this means kind of on their tax statement.
So for the or the thing you read?
Yeah, the tax increment.
Okay, so the agreement or the vote today is just for the tentative budget for FY26, which does not include any additional tax increment. So it's what's set by the certified tax rate and what we're estimating. The part here with the August 5th is to investigate, look at the possibility of increasing the capital levy. And the discussion we had in study session was up to 4 additional increments. So that would be the cap, deciding on that, and it could be 4, 3, 2, 1, or 0, as the board studies that and discusses and votes on that.
Okay, so this is a tentative budget with a declared tax rate.
The tax rate that was declared there is the current rate. If anything changed in August, that would be an increase from that.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying.
I just want to say thank you to the team. I think we had a great finance meeting today. I appreciate all the work that goes up into this point because it is such a massive lift. And I think we had a great conversation about how we can help present this to the public so that they have a solid understanding prior to our Truth and Taxation meeting. So thank you for your work.
Okay, any other comments?
Yeah, I just wanted to make note that this budget allocates 73% of the general fund to teaching and learning. That's going directly to our students. It prioritized our teachers in giving them a generous package. I would always love to give them double, but it's a good package. And it allows for some supported, or it allows for some targeted class size reduction. So we're not going to see it across the district, but we're starting to make steps towards that. However, I still am a little concerned and a little leery, so I'm going to continue to monitor parts of the budget, including the property tax increase and just how we deal with the decline of students, and make sure that we're still meeting the needs of students at the levels that we are.
Okay, any other comments? Okay, seeing none, we have a motion by Board Member Wilson and a second by Board Member Bateman. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Superintendent.
Thank you, board members. I would invite Eric Woodhouse, Executive Director of Operations, and Derek Farnes to come forward. We have been in the process of doing boundary studies, and they will make a recommendation to the board for the middle and high school boundary adjustments for the wildflower development in Saratoga Springs. And we recommend that the board approve their recommendation and set those boundaries.
Appreciate Derek Farnes, one of our directors in operations, for doing the boundary studies and taking that over. We've really tried to refine the process of how we go about boundary studies, making sure that we're getting the appropriate input from our community members, but also addressing a lot of the needs that the students have and our schools to make sure that we are balancing those school enrollment sizes. So without further ado, I want to turn the time over to Derek.
Thank you, Eric and the board and superintendent. All right. I'm going to get up close and personal with the mic here. In fact, we're just going to hold it. So we're going to talk about two boundary studies, but the first one here, as noted, is the wildflower boundary study in Saratoga Springs. Both boundary studies had people involved, priorities we looked at, options that were considered, pros and cons to each, and the recommendation ultimately to you as a board to vote on tonight. So the people involved, a large group of people, obviously parents that gave us input and feedback. Principals were involved for the schools that were potentially impacted by the boundary adjustments. School teachers and staff. The developers in both the Wildflower and Inverness areas were helpful as we were looking at how many lots and how many students when we would interpolate those to make some enrollment projections. The city planners in both Saratoga Springs and Lehigh, Frank Pulley and his facilities team, Rex Brimhall and his transportation team, in particular Raymond Bird as the GIS specialist helping on the boundary committee. Those on the operations team, and obviously you as a board and others in district leadership that were supportive through the process. Some of those priorities that you see there on the screen that we look at, school capacity utilization over time, trying to make sure we're utilizing the school capacity that we have, the proximity of the students and families to the schools, depending on which boundary they get pulled into. Keeping communities together, trying to keep people with their friendships and those that they interact with together. Obviously, patron preferences and the impacts to transportation. Do we need to add a bus, or can students walk and we don't have to have a bus in an area? And as you notice, that last bullet point, sometimes these priorities conflict. They don't always align perfectly, and so we have to prioritize the priorities. And we did that as we went through this process. So with the wildflower boundary study, we had two options that were presented to the public, option A and option B. Option A was adjusting the boundary to align the secondary boundaries with the elementary boundary that was adjusted about a year ago, so that there would be a pure feeder. And option B was simply not making a change to the secondary boundary, leaving it as is. With option A, we received public feedback, and obviously those that were in favor, they liked the aligning of those boundaries with the elementary, so they had the pure feeder. The school capacity utilization, there's lower enrollment at both Cedar Valley and Sage Canyon, and so moving students, as few as they may seem, it's a little bit of help getting them to move, or a little bit of help at Vista Heights and Westlake where they're a little more crowded. Proximity to schools is similar. For the middle schools, it's a little farther for the high school going in this option. Keeping communities together, it keeps the Black Ridge community together, again, that pure feeder. And there's also more wildflower development to the west of this area that we're looking at adjusting, and so there would be community of that wildflower development still together. As for transportation, there's going to be buses in the area for both options because west of there is still going to be in Sage Canyon and Cedar Valley, and east of there is still going to be in Vista Heights and Westlake. So there's going to be buses in the area, but there is a potentially longer high school route because of, again, that proximity for the high school. So that's option A. Option B, similarly, but kind of the opposite for some of these, public feedback, not changing schools or the disruption or avoiding that disruption. They have existing friendships they wanted to have that connection with and keep that connection with, were some of the comments from public feedback. The opposite with the school capacity utilization, the higher enrollment at both Westlake and Vista Heights. Proximity to schools is similar, but closer for that, similar for the middle school, sorry, and closer for the high school. Keeping communities together, this is where that existing connection to the Harvest Hills and then Saratoga Springs overall for some extracurricular activities they wanted with option B for those that commented that way. And then transportation, buses in the area again with a shorter potential high school route. Our recommendation with Wildflower, given those various criteria and priorities, again, they didn't always align, but the biggest things were we're aligning the boundaries with the elementary and having that pure feeder from Black Ridge going up into the secondary, as well as help a little alleviation of enrollment at Westlake and Vista Heights were the two biggest reasons recommending option A. Any questions that you have at this point about the Wildflower boundaries before you take a vote on that?
Cedar Valley High School is pretty maxed out. I mean, are they able to absorb this?
Yeah, that's a great question. So this coming year with Sage Canyon Middle School opening, all of the ninth graders are moving out of Cedar Valley High School, so they have significantly more room. Now, it doesn't mean they're not large or getting larger, as we know in Eagle Mountain, but they will have the room to absorb those.
Thanks for reminding me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks for your work on this, Derek. Just commentary. I think it's a great problem we have when people don't want to move schools because the schools that they have are so great that they don't want to be shifted. But then they realize that there's other great schools. I will also recognize that there is a significant change here as far as distance. I believe it's about 3.5 miles from Wildflower to get to Vista and Westlake. Cedar Valley's 10. So there is going to be there will be a cost associated with that as far as time for transportation, which we will be providing because they'll qualify for funded routes at the state level. I also want to communicate that we're looking at Westlake being 3,400 plus by the time before we can get that new high school opened. And with Cedar Valley being about 2,700 this fall, there's just a little bit more elbow room at Cedar Valley. With the growth, it won't stay at 2,700, but hopefully it won't hit 3,400. So also there is, I know that the developer has come and asked for an expansion to approve like Village 9, Village 10. So the growth is going to keep coming in Wildflower, and my preference is that we do changes earlier so it has the least impact to students, and then it basically sets a new expectation. So I appreciate all the work that has been done by the staff on this, so thank you. Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, I will entertain a motion to approve, maybe I'm just going to make the motion. I'm going to motion that we accept option A for the middle and high school boundary adjustments for the Wildflower development in Saratoga Springs.
I'll second.
Okay, with a motion by Board Member King and a second by Board Member Lincoln, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That passes unanimously.
Thank you. The next boundary is the elementary and secondary school boundary adjustments for the Inverness development in Lehigh. We recommend that the board approve or adopt the boundary as recommended by the boundary committee.
Thank you. And the same process we went through, I won't go through it all because it was a similar process of who was involved and the priorities, et cetera, but we used that same process. We had, again, two options. As much as you're seeing 6 maps on the screen, there was an option A and an option B. And then, of course, there's a map for the elementary, the junior high or middle school, and the high school level. And so those boundaries aligned going up all the way through option A from all those levels so that the feeders would be pure feeders going up from elementary to those secondary schools. And then similar in option B, they align going up. And so in option A, the public feedback, in large part, was the proximity to schools, being that those in the Inverness area in option A would be closer to those Lehigh schools. School capacity utilization. This is something looking at in the near future. There is a discrepancy between the enrollments in all three levels, with higher enrollments in those Lehigh schools. One of the things that I looked at in working with the developer in learning how many units were going into all four of the plats A, B, C, D, there are additional plats beyond 2029 that are going in, and additional students that will move in. And so especially in plats C and D that won't be completed by 2029. And so there's going to be additional students that would be going in option A, going to those schools to the east, Ridgeline, Timberline, and Lone Peak. And so that's the school capacity utilization, some pro, some con there. Proximity to schools, as mentioned, significantly closer to Belmont, Viewpoint, and Sky Ridge. Keeping communities together, Inverness is too large to be absorbed at one elementary school. And so to keep those pure feeders, we split the secondaries as well to have that aligned boundaries going all the way through from elementary through secondary. There is a natural break in the development between plat B and D, which is where the boundary line's drawn. And so that is something that keeping communities, you're going to have a better with that natural break in the development and following that for the boundary. As for transportation, those that are in the Inverness development in the Lehigh schools are within walking distance. And so we wouldn't have to have a bus for those schools going to those Lehigh schools. We will for the other schools regardless, for those that are over that 1.5 miles or 2 miles for elementary and secondary. As for option B, the public feedback, there was some of that with the balancing enrollments, trying to get closer where you add a few more kids going to the schools to the east, Ridgeline, Timberline, and Lone Peak. School capacity utilization, same thing, more balanced enrollment in the short term. Proximity to schools is that it's significantly farther to Ridgeline, Timberline, and Lone Peak for those students that would have to come from the Plat B area. Keeping communities together, same thing, but we're using a more artificial boundary line to draw that boundary line. And then transportation, we would need to transport those students, busing them literally past Viewpoint, along next to the Viewpoint fence to go to Timberline, or a block away from Belmont to go to Ridgeline, or a couple blocks from Sky Ridge to go to Lone Peak. And so there's that proximity, which is significant in this case. And so with those, our recommendation for Inverness is option A. That proximity to schools, that school capacity over time, even in the longer term, and then transportation, just that walking distance, again, because of that proximity. And with all of that said, any questions that you have for the Inverness boundary option recommendation before taking action?
Okay, thanks for that, Derek. I will entertain a motion regarding the Inverness boundaries.
I move that we adopt option A for the new Inverness boundary.
Okay, so we have a motion by Board Member Bateman and a second by Board Member Beeson. Any discussion?
So I think a couple of things to note here is this really is a solution for the next 2 or 3 years. We know that we need to do a larger scale boundary study with all of Lehigh. Right now, this is the least disruptive to our students who are already in our schools. Also, just to clarify a little bit on this, because there was so much public comment about it. Unfortunately, we do not have the purview to require builders to build a school, but it would be really lovely if we could. So thank you for those suggestions, but that is not an option for us. So we're aware that we need to balance things in the long term. And also, I just wanted to comment on the Viewpoint getting up to 1973. So right now, Viewpoint has portables. We know that would need to move to a satellite. The school is already prepped with a pad and the plumbing for that. So we know that we need to move that in to accommodate those. And at some point, we need to have a conversation about a field house or another space. So just wanted our public to know we've had a lot of conversations about what we need to do to support these schools to accommodate our students.
Any other comments? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor of approving option A for the Inverness development in Lehigh, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Superintendent.
Action item 6, we have received an offer for the home built by our CTE students in Orem, and we recommend that you adopt Resolution 2025-009, authorizing the sale of the CTE home in Orem.
Thank you. I'll entertain a motion.
I move that we approve the CTE home in Orem, Resolution 2025-009.
Second?
Okay, with a motion by Board Member Beeson and a second by Board Member Wilson. All in favor of approving Resolution 2025-009, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That passes unanimously.
Yeah, I was going to get to that. Too much sauntering before the meeting. We have finalized the 2025-2026 school fee schedule and spend plans and recommend that the board approve those.
Do we have a motion for approval of the school fee schedule and spend plans?
Move that we approve the school fee schedule and spend plans.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Board Member Clement and a second by Board Member Wilson. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the 2025-2026 school fee schedule and spend plans, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Superintendent.
Thank you. Action item 7, Resolution 2025-010 is the sale of our CTE home in Lehigh. We have received an offer on that and seek board approval to be able to sell that.
Thank you. Do we have a motion?
I move that we accept Resolution 2025-010, the sale of the CTE home in Lehigh.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Board Member Lincoln and a second by Board Member Bateman approving Resolution 2025-010, the sale of the CTE home in Lehigh. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That passes unanimously.
Can I just point out that both of those homes sold, one for the 600,000 plus and the other for 700,000 plus. These kids are doing an excellent job and having a wonderful experience learning on the job. So,
agreed. The homes are beautiful. They've done a phenomenal job.
And the profits from those homes will go back into the program. The kids don't get those proceeds. They will go back into the program for future opportunities. So we're grateful for the work that's done on those homes. Okay, discussion action items. These are items that the board, if you feel so moved, can move to action. You have the draft schedule for the 2026 board meeting schedule. And if the board is comfortable with that schedule, then we would recommend that you approve that schedule for board meetings in 2026.
Thank you, Superintendent. Do we have any discussion or do we have a motion regarding the 2026 board meeting schedule?
I wonder, as I look at that schedule, if it might be more advantageous to move the June board meeting back 1 week and give us just a little bit longer in the budget process to review the budget documents before we need to approve them.
So are you making a motion to accept the schedule with an amendment?
I was, I guess, seeing if there was discussion
Okay.
if people liked that idea.
Jason, any thoughts on how that would affect the timelines that you have, the deadlines you have with respect to the certified tax rate and other obligations?
Yeah, so for like this year, we have Monday as our deadline for the rates there. So it would be similar next year. It would be the Tuesday after that Monday. So we'd have to decide beforehand on that. I'd have to look exactly. I think the deadline is the end of June for accepting the budget rather than the middle, but I'd have to investigate into that.
So moving it we would have to decide prior to that board meeting date on the...
For what we're setting the rates with the county. Yeah.
Which one are we on?
The schedule, the board meeting schedule.
So moving the, Board Member Lincoln, you're recommending moving the June 16th board meeting to the June 23rd?
Yeah, I wonder if that would just be,
And Jason, you're suggesting that the likely deadline for the declaring the tax rate would be the 22nd, or would be the 15th, or the 22nd?
22nd.
Okay.
So we can keep discussing it, or we can move on, or we can do a motion, whatever you guys want to do.
I move that we approve the board meeting schedule.
Okay, we have a motion by Board Member Wilson. Do we have a second? Okay, we have a second by Board Member Beeson. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay. Okay, that passes unanimously. Superintendent.
Yes, so invite Legal Counsel Craig Brinkerhoff to come forward. Appreciate the work of the Policy Committee and the work that's been done on policies. A couple policies as per state statute that we're required to adopt. That is Policy 4162, Health and Disability. We recommend, if the board feels comfortable with the discussion, that you move that to an action item and adopt that policy. Mr. Brinkerhoff is available to answer any questions.
Yes, thank you. And just quickly to summarize what was done to this policy. So the health piece and disability piece basically remain the same. What was added is the parental leave, which we're now required to match at a minimum what the state employee parental leave policy is. So 6 weeks for parents who have children. Our policy also includes adopted children. So that's something new that we haven't necessarily had in the past. We've had it as a pilot, but it's never been non-piloted. So with the changes in the state law, this now matches what those changes are.
Thank you. Any discussion, or do we have a motion?
Are these essentially the same change in the two policies listed there?
Correct, yeah. So the next one that's on the board agenda, so one is for our certified staff and the other is for our educational support professional staff.
Okay, discussion or a motion?
I move that we approve policy 4162, health and disability.
Okay, we have a motion by Board Member Lincoln. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
A second by Board Member Peterson. Okay, any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of adopting policy 4162, health and disability, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That policy passes unanimously.
Given that the board approved that policy, we would recommend that you do the same for our support professionals and adopt policy 4412.
I move that we adopt policy 4412, health and disability leave, as amended. So,
Do we have a second? Okay, I'll second it. Okay, with a motion by Board Member Wilson and a second by Board Member King, all in favor of approving policy 4412, health and, oh, sorry.
can I just
Ada,
point out
apologize.
that we did have policy in place for these two, for adoption and postpartum, and we'd had policy in place, but this is just matching what's required by the law. It's not that we didn't have it before. I just wanted that to be clear, so thank you.
Okay. So we have a motion by Board Member Wilson, second by Board Member King. All those in favor of approving policy 4412, health and disability leave, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Superintendent.
Yes, next policy is policy 5250, electronic communication and devices. You're aware the state legislature passed law with respect to cell phone usage in schools. Each LEA or district is responsible to draft policy, implement policy, adopt policy that is consistent with that. Policy committee has worked on that, and I invite council to share that update, and if the board is ready to move forward on that after any discussion that is necessary, we recommend that you approve or adopt policy 5250, electronic communication and devices.
Thank you, Superintendent. So with this policy, again, this is a little bit reactionary to legislative changes to cell phone policies and prohibitions in schools. The state listed basically a floor of what the restrictions could be, and then we can either adopt it as is, or we could potentially put in more restrictions as we so choose as a district. So we adopted what the legislation says, and then we tweaked it a little bit. So the tweaks that we made are for grade levels. So what we put in is for elementary, it would be no cellular devices or devices that fall within that definition between the opening bell and closing bell. For middle schools, the same restriction exists, except that they can use their devices during the lunch hour. For the high school grades, they can use their devices before school, in between classes as they transition, at the lunch hour, and after school. So we made a little bit of a distinction there. We also made allowances within the policy so that individual schools, if they so chose, could restrict their individual schools' policies how they chose with their parent groups, their school community councils, et cetera. So this is not a top-down policy that says the whole district has to do it this exact way. It lays the framework and then allows schools to be tighter. They just can't be looser than what the policy would be. We worked with other school districts and conversed with other school districts to see what they were doing with their cell phone policies. This is the way we drafted it is very similar to what other school districts are doing, including Provo School District, Nebo School District, and others. So a lot of them have that tiered example in there with the different grade levels. We've talked with our supervisors as well over, for example, our elementary schools, because that's the area where we were a little bit tighter than state statute requires. Everybody that we've talked to is very supportive of it as read or as drafted in the elementary section. So,
Meaning the bell-to-bell is more restrictive than some?
yes,
Okay.
because the state legislation is not bell-to-bell. It's just not during class time periods. So any time that is not class time, then the cell phones are accessible. And then, of course, in line with legislation as well, if there's emergencies, if there's safety issues, if there's disability, IEP 504 exemptions, there's all those still built in.
And none of this applies to school-issued devices?
Yeah, so none of our school devices are communicating with parents or friends, right? Unless it's through like the email system. So this would not include Chromebooks or things like that.
So, Craig, I know we only really approve statement of policy, but you know I like to dig into the details. It's my fave. In 4.2.1, it talks about how in the first violation, the student's device is put in a container. I don't know if we can provide some clarity. I don't know if that means like a Tupperware or a shoebox, but if we could kind of maybe like clarify what the container is and who's in charge of the container, like are teachers providing containers to put these devices in? So I guess that's my request is if this becomes a discussion thing and not an action item, I would ask for that piece of clarity from the policy committee so that once we push this out to teachers, that we are perfectly clear about who's responsible for what. So that would be my request.
We did talk a little bit of having this more of a discussion item for tonight. The policy committee is meeting in 2 days, an all-dayer. We're pulling an all-dayer on Thursday. And so there'll be a little bit more discussion, Julie, and so we'll get with you after to make sure that that's addressed. There was a couple of little things that maybe we can discuss and talk about as well. So if this could be just a discussion item tonight, that would be helpful.
Two things I just want to comment on. Somebody mentioned a paper bag stapled. It could be as simple as that. But there also is no confiscation of the device ever, correct? Unless there's a withdrawal of privileges.
Yes, so the way the policy's drafted, we're not confiscating. So the teacher's never taking the device. They're simply putting it in some sort of container. And we purposely didn't define the container because we've had some schools that wanted to purchase lockable containers, others that might use, whatever it is they choose.
Okay, so I think that's going to be a discussion item, and enjoy Thursday. Superintendent.
Yes, I recommend that we adjust the order of the next three policies. It makes sense to, if the board approves, to adopt policy 7110, bullying prevention. That's a combining of the two policies preceding that would be retired. So I recommend that the board discuss, and if comfortable, move to action the approval of policy 7110, bullying prevention, as a combination of those previous policies listed there.
Thank you. Do we have any discussion, or do we have a motion?
I move that we move policy 7110 to an action item and approve it.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, with a motion by Board Member Clement and a second by Board Member Beeson. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, all in favor of approving policy 7110, bullying prevention, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Thank you.
Consequently, I recommend that you retire policy 4078, the bullying policy.
Okay, do we have a motion?
I move that we retire policy 4078, bullying policy.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, with a motion by Board Member Wilson and a second by Board Member Lincoln, any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of retiring policy 4078, the bullying policy, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that passes unanimously.
Policy 5181, the bullying policy should be retired. We just did that one? We did the other one? No, we didn't.
No, we're doing 5181 now.
Yeah, 5181.
We got it. We're on the roll.
Okay. Let's retire that policy as well.
Okay, do we have a motion?
I move that we retire policy 5181, the bully policy.
Second. Okay, so we have a motion by Board Member Lincoln and a second by Board Member Peterson. Any discussion?
Can I just point out that this is an ongoing process that we've been working on for quite some time to solidify and unify our policy and just get everything in order. So this has been going on for quite a while. So this is the culminating.
Was also a recommendation that came out of the performance audit that we had. And so I appreciate the board, appreciate the policy committee moving on this in a timely manner.
We're cleaning it up.
Okay. All those in favor of approving the retirement of policy 5181, the bullying policy, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that passes unanimously. Superintendent.
Yes, you've received the membership report, the final membership report for the year, and just recommend that you familiarize yourself with that. Similar trends have occurred throughout the year.
Thank you for that. It is now time for our board member and superintendent reports and information items.
So I just wanted to mention that I appreciate everyone's participation in our delegate assembly, where school board members throughout the state have come together on what their priorities will be for the legislature in the coming year. I thought it was an interesting data point that as we've looked at the bills passed in this session, in 2025, that there are 74 policies that will have to be revised to meet the bill requirements. So we'll be hearing a lot more bills that need to be revised, at least 74 of them this year. So policies, yeah, thanks.
Last week, we took a field trip with the foundation down to Windsor Elementary to look at the STARS program. And the team does fabulous work there. That's Carrie Miner with Mary Newbold and Rebecca Stauffer I remember when I first moved here years and years ago, it was much more of there was more autonomy. And so each program kind of functioned as it preferred. And now there is beautiful alignment with a framework with 3 target areas. This year we have 18 locations with 36 classrooms and 675 students across the district. So it's students going into 1st and 2nd grade. And really our teachers and paras have done just a fabulous job being able to help these kids stay on level and hopefully not see that same slump. And so I just want to say thank you to the individuals that show up every day for these kids. And it was hard to be inside in a building during the summer. And so very much appreciative of their work, and thank you to the foundation for funding it.
I would like to take a moment of personal privilege, if I may. We have 2 members of our senior leadership team who will be retiring or leaving us soon. And given that my days are numbered as well, I would invite Dr. Annalise Ruiz and Scott Sumner to please come forward. We take a moment to recognize them. Annalise has accepted a position in Salt Lake School District, and we're going to miss her and her influence. Scott Sumner is retiring and has accepted a position at BYU. Several years ago, when I was first an administrator, Scott was assigned to do his internship at Timberline Middle School. And our careers began as administrators about the same time. And Scott has been a dear friend for the past 22 years. And appreciate his friendship, appreciate the service he has given over those 26 years to the students of Alpine School District, to the families, and most recently as a member of our senior leadership team. He has just been an outstanding teammate, a dear friend, and a great advocate for public education. So Scott, I wish you the very best. Thank you. Annalise Ruiz came to us from Canyon School District several years ago and was a great addition to Alpine School District. When I was appointed superintendent, I knew I needed Annalise on our senior leadership team. With the perspective and the drive that she had, she would just make all of us better. And that has been the case. She is just an outstanding individual who cares deeply for others, who is very intelligent, who always says, I wonder, and helps us all wonder if there's a better way of doing things. And she will be an outstanding addition to Salt Lake School District. I wish her well in her endeavors. Is just a great friend, a great educator, and just a fantastic human being. So we, a couple years ago, created what we call the Influencer Award, and we give that as a senior leadership team to individuals who have significantly influenced Alpine School District, and both of you have done that, and I am grateful for my friendship for you, for my professional relationship with you, and I'm a better educator and a better individual because of my association with you. So thank you for the influence that you have had on me, the influence you have had on this district, the principals, the teachers, and the influence you have had on the communities that we represent. So congratulations.
Should have gone before that. Okay, I just wanted to show and express my appreciation to all the summer warriors. It's always kind of funny to me when people say that schools are closed for the summer, because that's not kind of even sort of what's happening. So I just wanted to thank like our physical facilities. They are in the midst of replacing turfs and tracks. They are moving portables and satellites. They're replacing carpeting. It is hardcore go time for physical facilities. Right now we have summer school going on, extended school year. We have school pantry, summer library, summer meal sites, stars, Sims, marching band. If you live close to a high school, you're getting serenaded a lot. We have sports programs happening, print services in the warehouse. This is like their busiest time of year as they are ordering Chromebooks and making sure everything is set for the first day of school and making sure that every teacher has what they need when it comes to print services. So I just want to extend my gratitude for all of the people who are working incredibly hard over the summer to make sure that our schools are in tip-top shape, ready to go, and that teachers have what they need when school starts. So thank you to all of our employees.
And I just wanted to also share some exciting news of a groundbreaking of a high school out in Saratoga Springs on Friday at 2 o'clock. Please join us if you would like to.
Okay, we do not have need of closed session, so I'll entertain a motion for us to adjourn our meeting. Or we can just hang out. That's
I move
cool
that
as
we
well.
adjourn. Having reached the end of our agenda, I move that we adjourn.
Okay, and we stand adjourned. Thank you all for being here. We appreciate it.